Hello, and welcome to Community Voices, where we talk to Humboldt County's movers and shakers. Today's guest, Jennifer Johnson, principal of Eureka High School. And now here's your host, Isabella Vanderheiden.
Hello and welcome to Access Humboldt's Community Voices. My name is Isabella Vanderheiden and I will be your host. Today we're speaking with Jennifer Johnson from the principal of Eureka High School. So Jennifer, I suppose I would start off by asking about the challenges you faced this year because of COVID-19. You know, you started off the school year in a much different place than it is ending. So what struggles have you, your staff, and your students faced this year?
I think the biggest struggle was the unknown. So the unknown of how we were going to start school, were we going to be hybrid, were we going to be with some in person, were we going to be full distance? So that got decided in August. We knew we were going to stay full distance, at least to start. And then kind of always having, I would say, 3 plans, depending on what, the regulations were going to change, what tier we were going to be in, what the board decided, what public health decided, the state decided. And so always having to watch all those different kinds of streams of information, and then making decisions as a district and as an executive or leadership team from the district level that we then carried out at the sites. So I think that was the hardest part. Once we got into the routine and settled into the routine of the distance when we were full distance, I think the staff did a phenomenal job of basically learning a lot of technology and new software really quickly. So we'd had some experience with the spring, being in distance on the spring, but it wasn't our full schedule every day like we did with our distance schedule. And so I think we set up a really good schedule for our kids. I think our kids had a lot more contact with our teachers, definitely than they did in the spring. They basically had a regular school day, and we told them, this is school, it's real, you're coming to school. This isn't roll out of bed when you want, click on the computer, check into the Google Classroom as you like. It's like, no, you need to show up, you're going to be marked tardy. Mm-hmm. Your teachers are going to be there, and you're going to be expected to do work like you were at school. So I think the fact that we set that from the very beginning. We've had incredible attendance this year. We actually went up our attendance compared to last year. I think we're 1.7% above our last year at the same time, or at the end of last year, like at the end of the actual, February, I think was the date they're comparing to. So super happy. The kids have been great. The families have been great at dealing with all this. We've, technology's been a challenge because our orders, because everybody was, all over the country and world was after the same equipment. So it was very challenging to get orders in, and I think our tech department did a good job of finding resources, and I think we did a good job of getting resources out to kids, including hotspots. We were driving around with Verizon tablet or Verizon Chromebooks that were hotspots built in because the T-Mobile hotspots didn't necessarily work everywhere, especially for the high school because our kids come, from Neyland to Elk River to all over compared to an elementary district. So that was challenging to get the right kid, the right technology, but we ended up doing that. And now we're at the point where we really have enough devices that we're one-to-one for our students. So if any student that wants to have a district Chromebook can have a district Chromebook.
All right, great. And so how many of your students, as I understand, your students are still able to choose whether or not they distance learn and go to in-person learning. How many have chosen to remain distant?
It's about a third overall. Mm-hmm. But when they made the choice, when we came back the beginning of March, we had families basically make the choice for the semester. And then we split the in-person kids into the A cohort and the B cohort and put them on 2-week rotations. We were able to bring all of our seniors who were in A or B back on campus at the beginning of April if they chose to come, all the time. So we call them the F cohort now for full time. And then we also started really looking at some of those kids who had chosen to be on campus, but really needed to be here full time. So we looked at students in our, kind of our special populations. So IEP, ELD, homeless, foster, and that were struggling, that we had definitely seen if they were back for A or B, were doing better on campus. And we brought some of those students back full time in April. And then Another group of them after spring break we brought back, kind of working with counselors to identify students who really could benefit, but we really were focused on the kids who had chosen to be here in A or B. And then because of what happened with some of the elementary schedules, that after spring break, there were some students on distance who really were, taking care of younger siblings. And once those siblings went back for a longer period of time, we were able to bring them back that wanted to be here, but just really couldn't because they were taking care and watching younger siblings. And then the beginning of May, we actually were able to bring our juniors back who were on A and B and bring them back full time. And then just this week, we're bringing another we kind of went back through our freshmen and sophomores, and we brought some other students back who were struggling being, with the rotation. And then a lot of the students on distance, we have definitely plenty of students on distance who are doing really well. But I think it is a struggle for some to be on distance. And definitely next year, we're going back 5 days a week, full-time or regular schedule, and we want students on campus.
Absolutely. And have you experienced any COVID spread at the high school? I know it seems as though, what public health has said is that it really seems like kids who get infected, they tend to get it outside of the school from family. But I guess, have you seen any of that? Has there been any spread within the school? And how do you negotiate that?
We have not identified any spread within the school. I think it's like public health has said, somebody gets it, whether it's travel exposure on the outside to a group, and then all of a sudden, we'll have a student who's placed in isolation or quarantine because of that. So we have a pretty solid process. We've had to quarantine some groups of students who have been exposed and deemed to be a close contact. But I think public health has been phenomenal to work with. Like, it doesn't matter what time of day, weekend, Sunday morning. I mean, Dr. Van Vleck and I were on the phone on a Sunday morning standing in my yard with Dr. Enos one weekend, and he took our phone call, answered all our questions. We figured out what we were going to do, and we were able to move forward. So, they've been really great to work with. We actually do what's called a targeted quarantine at times, because we have the 6-foot spacing and the students are masked, they're in seating charts, the teachers know, who's where. And the teachers are super aware of where the kids are. Like, if they do, leave the classroom to go to the office or, or just really knowing what the kids are doing during their period. So if we do have to call and question, they can really give me pretty good detail. And so we haven't had to quarantine within classrooms because we've had, the kids are phenomenal. Like, wearing their masks, doing what they're supposed to be doing. I think, they really want to be here. And everybody asks, do you have to tell them all the time to put their masks on? And it's like, no, they just do it. They walk up and down Del Norte Hill with their masks on, going to wood shop. That just has not been an issue for us. And because of that, we've been able to, I think, really keep kids on campus.
Wow, interesting. That's really great to hear. What a relief. And so, as you, of course, know, I'm sure, adolescents between 12 and 15 now have access to the Pfizer vaccine. And I believe it was Tuesday, Public Health had said they're hoping to set up a mass vaccine clinic by the end of this week for the age group. But as far as I know, that hasn't come to fruition. So can you sort of touch on what this means for your students? And of course, students over 16 have had access to the vaccine for some time. So also, what percentage of your students are vaccinated, if you know?
I don't know, because it's not something, we're requiring.
Right.
Definitely encouraging them and sharing information like via our Facebook page and the district. And so, anecdotally, talking with a lot of my seniors, especially those that are athletes, are getting vaccinated. In fact, quite a few of them are at the point within the next week or two, they'll be fully vaccinated because they just got their second shot like last week. And really, we've talked with the kids about, in working with public health, like, we just had to kind of do a quarantine of some students this week. And, it was an outside kind of coming in, but then because the kids were deemed a close contact, we did have to quarantine a group in an extracurricular activity. And so, but there were 2 students in that group that were fully vaccinated that we didn't have to quarantine. And the kids were like, wait. And I said, well, they're like, but I got my second shot. I said, well, it's 2 weeks after your second shot. So when is that date? And if that date is before the quarantine ends, you can come back on that date. And so we do have some students. I have one who's in that situation, like the quarantine ends next Friday, but she actually can come back before that because her 2-week date will be before that. So really, I think they're seeing the impact also, in a real way of, oh, if I'm vaccinated, I don't have to get quarantined. And the staff has been that way. I know the vast majority of the staff is fully vaccinated, so we've not had to quarantine any staff. And so that was kind of my worst fear early on coming back, is all of a sudden if we had to quarantine and it took out 6 teachers and then they had to come in on distance, we can do that. That's not difficult, but then getting the bodies to be in the room with the kids that are here because the teacher's quarantined, subs are not plentiful this year, that's for sure, with this environment.
Yeah, I'm sure. And so, of course, yesterday Biden lifted the mask mandate. And so, communities, businesses, schools, they can make their own decisions about whether or not they're going to move along with that guidance. Will Eureka High still ask their students and staff to continue wearing masks for the duration of the school year?
Definitely. And California really has not lifted the California mask mandate. So as a state, California still has the mandate for, indoor spaces. And so I think that's a little bit different than what came out of the CDC yesterday. Mm-hmm. It's their recommendation, and then how different states or, counties or businesses or tribes or, school districts implement that then becomes up to us. We'll follow, we're going to wait and see what the guidance is from the State Department of Public Health and then our local Department of Public Health. But at this point, I don't see it change. It's not going to change for this school year.
Right, absolutely. And so on the whole, how has the pandemic affected the success of your students? You had sort of touched on that, but what are some of the major differences in grades and testing and, behavior that you've seen?
Behavior, really, we haven't. I think definitely, for the kids overall, especially when we were on distance, kind of more of that social emotional of not having the connections that they, especially as teenagers, that's such a big, important part of school, is that social connection with their peers and all the different activities. We really did try to maintain and adapt a lot of our activities. I think we were the only school that had a virtual homecoming dance. I actually chaperoned it on my cell phone from out of the area. I thought I'll never get to do this again. But, I think our student government, our student athletic council, our AVID students, our music students, our theater, we went with full on, old time, radio productions basically for our theater program. So they've really adapted what they normally do so that the kids still have that connection and experience. Our clubs have all met virtually, had really good attendance, when we were in distance. FFA is back now to having in-person, all of our clubs that are on campus now meet in person, and then the kids that are at home come in on the meet. But we are meeting in person for those activities. I know the freshman or sophomore class is going to do a community cleanup. They've just figured out ways to do things under the guidelines. We're having our senior athletic awards on Monday night. And it's going to be a drive-in style where everybody can park out in the parking lot, and then the kids will come up on the stage outside in front of the gym in their full formal attire. We've really adapted to try to have those things. Grade-wise, we've seen, definitely an increase, I would say, in D's and F's, but we've also, this is the highest graduating class in my 6 years and probably really ever in Eureka High. Our valedictorian has a 4.8 something GPA, which is unheard of. Incredibly high GPA. He's actually going to University of Chicago on a Quest program scholarship. He got a full ride, so we're super excited for Stephen Hadley. And then our 2 salutatorians are up in the 4.6 range, which usually is where my valedictorian is. And then I have 10 students in a group below them that are in the 4.5 range, which is usually higher than where our salutatorians are. So the fact that this class, basically has had almost a year and a half of upheaval, and those top students in this class have done incredibly well. In fact, they're all probably taking their AP environmental test right now in the auditorium. But then there's definitely students that have struggled, and we've definitely seen kind of that anxiety, depression. And so really looking at what services we can put in place both now and really beef up our services for next year, both for keeping kids on track for graduation. We're going to have a much more robust summer school program this year, both trying to get kids on campus, especially our incoming ninth graders, to get them acclimated to the campus. And then also for credit recovery, we're going to do some extra credit recovery during the year next year. And then we're going to bring on some extra support within the counseling office also.
Excellent. Yeah. Wow. This pandemic, the good parts of it, is highlighted how adaptable, students are, teachers are, that we all are, and that's so excellent that it is, kind of led to some of those programs and enhancements for your school. Can you talk more about the summer school program that you're going to have? I've covered some meetings where Superintendent Van Vleck had mentioned that. So, what kind of programs are you going to be having?
So this is the first year we'll actually have the incoming ninth graders come on campus for summer school. And so we're going to do what's called, basically a ninth grade boost class, particularly focusing on math, because sometimes, those students have definitely had a lot of distance learning from last spring at the end of their seventh grade year and then, through their eighth grade year. So making sure they're ready, hopefully to be in Algebra 1 as freshmen, because that's where we want them to be. And so maybe if they were placed in Algebra 1A, hopefully with this summer boost, they can be ready to actually start Algebra 1. Or if they were placed in Algebra 1 and they want to be in our accelerated class, be able to make that jump. And then they'll also have an elective wheel. So like our culinary teacher is going to teach a 2-week class. We have a science teacher that's actually working with the Eureka tribe to teach a fisheries, based on, and it's bringing in a lot of the cultural and geographic elements along with the scientific, parts that go with that. So we're super excited to offer that and partner with the tribe to kind of flesh out a curriculum outline that they have. What else? And then our ag teachers are going to teach a rotation that'll be part of that. So we're trying to get some different electives that they will then rotate in with along with the boost class. So that'll be for the incoming ninth graders. And then our students, we have a geometry and algebra 2 course for students that want to accelerate, or maybe they struggled a little bit and they don't quite feel like they're ready to go to the next level. And this will give them kind of that extra boost before they do go to algebra 2 or math analysis. We have some students who are in our advanced, they're just going to finish the whole advanced thing and accelerate all the way through and kind of get done and then go to the next level. So we're pretty flexible with those kids with what they want to do. And then we have our typical credit recovery for students who need, whether they need English credits, math credits, and then we're going to actually use a program called Edgenuity, which I'm really excited to use, and multiple schools in our area and also over in the Reading area use it. So I feel pretty comfortable with choosing this program because then students have access to a wide variety of electives. If they need to make up elective credits, if they need to make up Spanish 1, it's got language classes, because we can't necessarily hire, teachers for all those different classes, but we have a teacher that can help facilitate and monitor, and then they can do those classes online. So, and then we'll have our life skills class, which that's been our class that's been on campus all year, and it's been fun to have those students. They've actually taken over our cafeteria as part of their classroom in order to have more space and more fresh air. They've totally revamped. If anybody went to Eureka High and knows it as the smoking area when they were in high school, some people know what I'm talking about. It's we call it the outback off the cafeteria. But they've planted an herb garden that our culinary class is using, and they have native plants and flowers, and really they've taken on that as a project. And so we're excited. They'll also be on campus and maintaining that over the summer as part of their class. And they maintain our flower beds around campus as you come in the entryway.
Excellent. That's great. I'm a gardener myself. So
if you ever want to come down and help them out, they're definitely always busy.
Cool. And so what are graduation ceremonies going to look like this year?
So our graduation will be in Albee Stadium at 2:00 on June 11th, which is our normal pattern. It will depend on which tier we're in at the time. So right now in orange, with the size of our graduating class, we're going to do probably 6 to 7 tickets. We're still kind of looking at that number right now today. We were trying to figure out, okay, is it 6 or is it 7? But it'll be ticketed. So the students will have, that many guests basically that they can invite. And then, of course, spread out. And that's where I think with the new guidelines, around masks and being outdoors and being fully vaccinated, I feel much more comfortable with graduation, how we have it structured and set up. And it will be, the students will be sitting farther apart, not necessarily side by side in their rows, but it will look like a Eureka High graduation.
That's how comforting that must be for all the families and, the students who saw their peers graduate last year, and it was drive-by graduations,
Yeah. Yeah, and we tried last year because we even moved ours to July, hoping that, maybe we would be at the point where we'd know more, we'd be down, and we'd be able to do something in person, even if it was limited. And we ended up having to do the drive-through also. But the kids, I met with the senior class officers, and I was like, all right, here's your options. What do you want to do? And they're like, we want to be in the stadium. And we also got the stadium. So that's, I guess, another thing, because the stadium during the rainy season is closed because of the drainage issues. And the culvert, but SHN did all their testing. They can do special imaging underground to check. And we just got clearance last week to open the stadium back up and use it and they're checking it each week moving forward. So I think it'll be fine as long as we don't have a big rainstorm between now and graduation.
Sure thing.
Yeah.
And, of course, it's really difficult to predict what the future holds with COVID-19 and living in this pandemic. But what does the 2021-22 school year look like at this point?
At this point, it looks like our normal schedule. So 6 periods a day, our normal bell schedule that we've run prior to the normal year. And that's what I'm planning for. We will have a very limited distance offering. I'm really hoping that all kids are back on campus. We do understand that, for certain families that might need to be an option. And so we're really trying to figure that out because we want kids to be at Eureka High.
Right, surely. And so really the last thing I would ask you, it's pretty broad, but can you tell me your thoughts on how COVID-19 has changed the way we educate our kids, and especially at the high school level and preparing kids for adulthood?
So I think the students have really, I was just talking with a couple of my math teachers, we've really almost expected them to step up and act like college students, to manage their time. Because we have them on block schedules where they only have 3 periods a day. So they have, instead of having their classes 5 days a week, they have all classes on Monday short, kind of as an introduction to the week. And then they have 135, 246, 135, 246. So, managing that is a little more challenging rather than just knowing you're going period to period every day. And then having to manage your time because they aren't at school as long, although I would say teachers have really, with the 80-minute blocks, students definitely have a chunk of time to get work done in that 80 minutes. So for a lot of our classes, if the students are utilizing that time well, they really don't have homework, but definitely not in the upper level. So students in AP and honors classes have really had to, more so than normal, I think, learn to manage their time and figure out a schedule of what's due when and what do I prioritize. But they've done pretty well with that. So I think, and just the technology skills that students have, the students are phenomenal at solving problems when we have trouble with Meets or Google Classroom or, the different programs that we're using. I think their ability to adapt to new software, because we've definitely, both for the staff and the students, and really feel comfortable and just diving right in and trying rather than kind of being leery and not using it. And that's the whole staff is at that point now. I kind of tell them we were working with Google Classroom probably 3 years prior to the pandemic and starting to use Google Classroom. And then there were teachers who were definitely using it and using it quite a bit. And then there were teachers that were kind of using it as a way to put things where kids could go get it. Like if they were absent, they could access the PowerPoint, if they were absent because they were sick or they were gone for a school activity. And then there were the teachers who are the ones that are like, oh my God, Jennifer, you're making me do Google Classroom again. I'm never going to use that. And so, but now everybody's they're a proficient to expert user. And so I think that with kids moving forward, if you think about how colleges use, whether it's Canvas or Blackboard, or even businesses, how you use those kind of team management software programs, our kids are really fluent in those now. They can move between Google Docs and Google Slides and Pear Deck and Google Classroom and breakout rooms. And if the sub is having trouble, the kids talk the sub through how to work it and make it run. I think that really is one of the things that they're going to walk away with is a really solid skill set Being able to do, virtual meetings and meets. I think that's something our classrooms are all set up for it. We can bring in outside presenters. There'll be times where we don't need to travel because, really, if you're traveling, to Ukiah for a 1 or 2 hour meeting, do you really need to drive 6 hours? Just be able to just get on a meet and stay here. So I think those things, it'll be interesting to see what continues.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there will be a lot of things that we will continue to utilize.
Absolutely. And, Jennifer, that's really all the time we have today. So I'd like to thank my guest, Eureka High School Principal Jennifer Johnson, for being here. And thanks for joining us. We will see you next time on Community Voices.
This has been Community Voices with your host, Isabella Vanderheiden. If you represent a nonprofit organization and are interested in being a guest on Community Voices, send an email to info@accesshumboldt.net or call 476-1798. Access Humboldt, local voices through community media.